What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you look at this image that is behind me in this video right now? You can clearly look at it and you can identify the Japanese motifs behind the architecture, behind some of the little assets that are in the image itself. There's a distinct Japanese look and feel to this image. You can also see that there's the theme of nature reclaiming civilization going on, with the tree kind of like growing and taking over that center building that you see in the image itself. But fundamentally, can you identify, if I was to tell you that this is concept art for a video game, can you identify what type of video game this is going to be? I think a very easy answer to that would be something in lines of survival, because usually when you see nature taking over buildings and stuff like that, survival is one of the things that kind of jumps to mind, at least to me personally. However, what if I was to tell you that this particular piece of concept art is a potentially new Monster Hunter game? You guys are going to be like, oh, a new Monster Hunter game. We're not talking about one from Capcom, though. Keep that in mind. This is going to be a new Monster Hunter game, but I should temper your expectations, because this game is going to be coming to us from EA. And that is naturally something that is going to put a damper on how some of you guys are going to be looking at it. So if we take a look at this particular press release, I actually saw the news yesterday in my live stream through some of the mainstream media websites, but today I decided to look for the actual press release itself. And as you can see, this is an official press release from EA. And Electronic Arts is partnering with Koei Tecmo, I can't speak today for some reason, working together on the next great hunting game. EA Originals label to publish new AAA game from Omega Force, the Japanese studio at Koei Tecmo, responsible for Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors series. Now, before we even begin analyzing all of this, one of the things that I would like to point out is that this is being published in the EA Originals label. Why is this important? EA Originals label is actually one of the few labels that EA has that has been published, that has published some interesting games. Like, for instance, I've heard fantastic things from It Takes Two, which I personally still haven't played. It's not really my kind of game, but Hazelight Studios has done amazing work with that. And I kind of feel like the previous game that they did, which was the one with the two guys escaping from prison, I forget what the name of that game was. One of the things that I really appreciated about the stuff in that game was how customer friendly these games were. There weren't really any type of microtransactions that I can remember, at least. And on top of it, these games, due to the fact that these are games designed around co-op, essentially, these were games that even had stuff which is like a friend's pass or whatever. So one person buys the game and you can kind of like share it with a friend, and a friend is able to play the full game with you, and only one person needs to have the game license, which is really cool. Now, I'm pointing this out because these were also titles that were published under EA Originals. Another title that I can think of is, I believe, Unravel, and there's many more. I'm sure that if you look up EA Originals, you'll find some pretty nice gems out there, which is always impressive, because what we usually hear from EA is things like FIFA, Madden, and all of these things that are completely and absolutely atrocious, and most of us that actually enjoy gaming do not care for this type of predatory monetization that EA tends to do with most of their main titles. So the fact that this is being published under the EA Originals label gives me a little bit of hope as to it not potentially just being a bukkake of monetization practices. But naturally, we're going to have to wait until we see the game released, or until we see like at least some kind of an inkling as to what the business model for this game is going to be. So let's take a look at the rest of this press article, and then I have something else that I want to show you guys as well. So Redwood City, California, Business Wire, Electronic Arts Incorporated, NASDAQ, EA Originals label has announced a new partnership with Koei Tecmo and Studio Omega Force, team behind the popular Warriors series, including Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors, to develop and release the next great hunting game. This original IP delivers a truly AAA experience based in fantasy feudal Japan, with more details about this exciting new title coming later this month. So we will be receiving more news about this, so if you are interested in knowing more about this game, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and hit the like button, because that's also helps out if you are enjoying this video. But, subscribe, stay tuned, because I will be covering every news that comes out of this game, at least unless I figure out that I'm actually not going to be interested. But so far, obviously, it being a Monster Hunter-like game is something that is going to interest me a lot. Now, we have some words here from the person over at Koei Tecmo. He says, it's an honor to be partnering with EA Originals and have the support of a team with such an incredible track record of releasing groundbreaking new games, said Yosuke Hayashi, Executive Vice President of Koei Tecmo Games Co. Limited. The EA team fully embraces our creative independence and have become invaluable partners, offering both development and publishing support. Adding the global resources of EA with our own will help us introduce a new kind of hunting game to a global audience of players and expand our reach into global markets. I'm really looking forward to the day that gamers from around the world can play this new game. Now, after this, they go on to talk about Koei Tecmo games, iconic games, range of genres from hack and slash games to hunting action games and more. Oh, they do talk about hunting action games. In addition to its popular Warrior series, the studio is known for its work on series like Attack on Titan, Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, Hyrule Warriors, and more. They don't talk about one of the most important ones, but let me just get through this. Building on the incredible success of EA Originals, which includes the recent releases of It Takes Two and Knockout City, we're thrilled to be partnering with the amazingly talented Omega Force team, said Jeff Gammon, General Manager of EA Partners. They've elevated the hunting genre to the next level, merging their proven talent for combat gameplay with unexpected and innovative mechanics. We can't wait to introduce their groundbreaking new adventure to the world later this month. Interesting. They've elevated the hunting genre to the next level. These are bold claims, particularly when you consider that Monster Hunter World came out and smashed records when it came to Capcom franchises. Monster Hunter World is effectively the most successful game that Capcom has ever done, and it sold millions, okay? So when you're making a bold claim like you've elevated the hunting genre to the next level, this is something that I'm going to be keeping in mind when I report on future news of this game. So you're setting the bar for this very, very high. Then on top of it, they talk about merging their proven talent for combat gameplay with unexpected and innovative mechanics. We'll see how those work. One thing is for sure, because I know that some people will not be aware of this, because I know that a lot of my audience came from Monster Hunter World, but with when it comes to Koei Tecmo, they have, particularly Omega Force, they have already done a Monster Hunter-like game in the past. As a matter of fact, I used to call it the arcade version of Monster Hunter because it was a little bit more friendly. It was not as harsh in terms of the consumables and stuff like that you would have to get, in terms of the levels of preparation that you would have to do. It was much easier to kind of get into, and this is actually a game that I would still recommend to this day if you are interested. Some of you might be wondering, why don't I do more content about this particular game? The reasoning is the algorithm is not going to be particularly nice about it, which kind of sucks, but you will be able to find a lot of videos of this game in my channel. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of gameplay from one of the videos. I'm not going to be showing any audio because I'm doing live commentary while I'm doing it. This was captured from PlayStation Vita, so the gameplay is not going to look the sharpest, but this here is Toukiden. And as you can see, this is a title. I mean, you can't see it instantly from the get-go, but the inspiration from this title is clearly Monster Hunter. Trust me on that. The difference is they use these spells and buffs as kind of the consumables. You don't actually have consumables that you use while you are in here, and you're able to do these different spells that power you up, spells that heal you up. And you have a limited amount of uses that you can do with these spells, and then you'll be able to purify parts of monsters that you chop off, which regenerates your number of spells. There's a number of mechanics to this. Right here I'm playing a Kusarigama, which is a weapon in this game that allows you to constantly jump up and just stay in the air and beat the crap out of the monster, which was one of the aspects that I really enjoyed. But this is a very enjoyable game, and this was a game that I thought was really fun back in the day. One of the things that it definitely was missing was a marketing push in the West. This game is one of those that initially came out exclusively in Japan, and then a year later or maybe a couple of months later, I don't know the exact dates, It eventually came back to the West, and they released it here on the West, and it was a PlayStation Vita exclusive, which, as you can imagine, greatly reduced its reach. But it was still a really fantastic video game, and again, this was developed by Omega Force, which kind of shows you that they do have some experience in this genre. They also did Toukiden 2, which in my opinion was not really as good. They tried mixing in the hunting genre with a more open world setting and a lot more storytelling and stuff like that, and I kind of got a little bit burned out of that one. It was still very good in terms of the combat and stuff like that, and interestingly enough, Toukiden 2 actually had a claw-like mechanic that a lot of people, when Iceborne came out of it, the few people that had played Toukiden 2, recognized that the clutch claw was a little bit similar to the claw that you had in Toukiden 2, which, it's an interesting thing to consider. But basically, all of this to say, this team has experience, because a lot of people think Omega Force and Koei Tecmo, and they just think about the Dynasty Warriors game, Hyrule Warriors game, all of the spin-off games that they've done, but they do have experience developing this type of game, and it was, in a way, in my opinion, the gameplay of Toukiden and Toukiden 2 were actually really, really good. So if they now partner up with EA, just mostly in terms of, figuring out how to market this game on the West, I think is one of the biggest parts of releasing it, figuring out a way to publish it simultaneously both in Japan and in the West, because again, whenever you publish something in the Asian market first and then you try to bring it over to the Western market, people end up being somewhat reticent to adopt it because, the hype has died down. Some people will have played the imported version, all of that. So a simultaneous release is, in my opinion, one of the most important things when it comes to this. And with them partnering with EA, that is probably what they're shooting for. I mean, one of the main reasons, in my opinion, why Monster Hunter World was so colossally successful, besides the fact that it is to this day a fantastic friggin' game, was the fact that it was the first Monster Hunter game with a simultaneous release. There is definitely a lot of people that enjoyed this genre, and it's all going to be down to how much is EA going to stick their grubby little mitts into the monetization of the game. That is going to be one of the most important things that will dictate how I personally feel about it. But overall, I'm pretty excited to check out what comes out of this. Another thing for those of you that need a reminder, I believe I've already reported on this, but back in January, Microsoft was also reportedly developing a Monster Hunter style co-op game. This is a rumor that came from the Giant Bomb podcast from GamesBeat journalist Jeff Grubb, which again, it's worth what it's worth, but you can definitely see that if you are a big publisher and you're looking at what are the popular genres, what games should we be backing, what games should we be trying to develop, when you see the colossal success of 2018's Monster Hunter World, like selling millions and millions of copies, I think that at this point it sold over 20 million copies at least, and still going, because, even though Rise has come out, and, by the way, Rise t-shirt from Eric's Gaming, friggin' awesome. But, even with the release of Rise, a lot of people still kind of miss the Monster Hunter World experience, which was a little bit more immersive, a little bit more complex, a little bit more current gen, so to speak. There's definitely still a market there to be filled. So I think it's interesting that Microsoft themselves are also jumping into the arena. Apparently they're using developer Certain Affinity, who has collaborated in Halo and Call of Duty games, amongst others. And here's what the Grubb person said. Jeff Grubb said, they're working with Certain Affinity on what seems like a Monster Hunter style game, a Monster Hunter clone. They see this gameplay style succeeding, and Microsoft's like, hey, we should try to make one of those. Anyone out there going to pitch one? They want more variety in the kinds of games they're putting on Game Pass, and this is an example of that. Certain Affinity, based in Austin, Texas, is led by former multiplayer and online lead for the Halo series, Max Huberman. February last year, the developer announced it was working on a brand new IP. Are we excited to take on a genre and style of game that we've always loved? Thrill beyond words, and we are honored to be bringing this game to the market, indescribably so. Are there any other tantalizing details regarding this new venture? More than we can say. But yeah, Seth Hubbard at the time, we have been building towards this project for the past few years. We're thrilled to have signed an agreement to lead development on our most ambitious title to date. This game is our creative vision to lead, and our team is exceptionally passionate about it. It's possible this new IP is a Monster Hunter style game Grub describes. Now, the important thing about this is, while I think it's really cool that more publishers are taking on the Monster Hunter genre. I mean, we've had plenty of Monster Hunter likes in the past. I talk a lot about, in my opinion, which the best one is Soul Sacrifice. Again, my opinion. Some people prefer Freedom Wars. Some people prefer Toukiden. There's a lot of Monster Hunter likes, so to speak, already in existence, but there's definitely a market to be filled due to the fact that not a lot of those Monster Hunter likes are in current gen systems. Like, you got Dauntless, you got Monster Hunter, you have very little else. So there's a market to be filled there for sure, but it's also important that these are quality games and are not monetized in predatory ways. But for that, I will continue to report as we know more about these games. So let me know if you enjoyed this video in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching. And if you did enjoy it, hit the like button. And if you want to know more about this kind of stuff, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.